The ROI of AI. What results can you expect and how quickly? So we all know ever since the viral launch of ChatGPT now over 2 years ago, a lot of pharma teams and medical affairs has been really excited to adopt AI within their organization. In fact, many companies have launched Enterprise GPT or partnered with organizations like OpenAI to enable access to forms of ChatGPT compliantly. But I would say we're still very much in the early adoption of fully leveraging LLM or Gen AI capabilities for advanced problems and use cases that can have tremendous value for medical affairs. And oftentimes, a common challenge or gap that I see, as well as a question I hear from other medical affairs leaders, is how do I know where to start with AI? How do I know what I can expect with AI? And what will the ultimate ROI be? So let's dig in and look at a framework for evaluating that. So first, I want to define what do I mean when I talk about AI. So AI more broadly in the context of this video means Gen AI as well as machine learning models, computer vision, OCR, and NLP. So when I talk about AI, I'm not talking about something separate from Gen AI. They're all grouped under the broader bucket. It's just Gen AI is the newer innovation in the field. So now that we've gotten the AI definitions out of the way, second, I want to define another axis by which to think about implementing AI as well as its ROI. There's the ChatGPT, Enterprise GPT, or Copilot prompt use cases. And then there's actual advanced AI applications which can leverage Enterprise GPT, but they go beyond prompts. So with GPT prompt only use cases, those fundamentally have gotten through to a lot of different life science organizations and medical affairs teams. And that in a way has probably already shown its ROI through time efficiency, creativity, brainstorming, Copilot, etc. And for those use cases, a lot of those tasks where prompt only applications work tend to be fairly low risk, creative, and have a human involved in the loop. So if I'm rephrasing a paragraph or I want to personalize an outreach to an HCP, go to Enterprise GPT, pop something in. As an MSL, I can review it for compliance, etc., and send it off, right? Or use it in my presentation internally. So a lot of the problems that ChatGPT purely from a prompt perspective is being applied to tend to be fairly small in scale. The second bucket of ROI from AI really comes from solving more complex problems. So whether that is a fully holistic literature review or field insights or med info or understanding medical education outcomes, etc. Those tend to be more advanced use cases where things like accuracy are really important, and just sending a prompt into ChatGPT is not going to be comprehensive enough or accurate enough to deliver high quality answers that are up to the standard and bar of most teams. So within the spectrum, what I want to focus on is first, when should you consider adopting advanced AI? So I'm talking not about the prompting, I'm talking about more advanced AI technologies. So typically the times that companies or teams will do that is at a minimum when you have a large enough of a data set. And we're talking, once you start getting into like 1,000 field insights, right? Or 10,000, 100,000, or you have thousands of grants. When you start to have that much volume of data, it's near impossible for a human to analyze it, even though a lot of that analysis I still see be done manually today. The second key is typically when there's someone on your team that is specifically assigned to medical outcomes, medical insights, medical analytics. That means that is a priority, and this is where AI can help that person in that role really achieve their outcomes that much faster. And then lastly, a lot of teams that already might have a robust technical foundation typically look to integrate advanced AI to further refine and optimize, where AI can be more predictive, right? Or can segment HCPs based on their knowledge understanding, or help understand which medical education grants are driving the most educational impact, right? So then you can really focus your efforts on what's working. So once you've established like AI is great to adopt, or you're interested in experimenting with what value AI can bring to your team, the second thing is defining what ROI can AI give. And the ROI can fall into 3 buckets. The first bucket, the most common one, being time efficiency. We're all familiar with that. So AI, depending on the outcome, can reduce your time from hundreds of hours of manual work all the way down to a couple of hours, if not minutes of work, depending on what the task is. This is the most common way to measure ROI, and it's the most easy to measure. However, I think the power of AI really lies in the latter two, which is one, AI is able to actually unlock extra value creation. And what I mean by that is, let's take the example of medical affairs and field medical med info or literature. Yes, AI can enable efficiencies in things like literature review and sifting through insights. But what it also does on the flip side is it enables you to measure things like sentiment, map out where an HCP is on the scientific narrative, or also enable more predictive modeling and segmentation of those HCPs. That is just not possible from a human perspective, but it is incredibly valuable from enabling medical strategy. And that goes beyond just a time efficiency. And then lastly, reducing risk. So coincidentally, as you might not think, AI generally tends to be a thing that most perceive to increase risk, and that is also a case. But you can leverage AI to help reduce risk, like for example, applying it to compliance or pre-reviewing MSL inputs and ensuring that everything's done compliantly. If there's an adverse event mentioned, how does that get reported within 48 hours? Technology and AI can actually help reduce the risk depending on how you apply it. So the three buckets are time efficiency, actual new value creation or new impact creation, and then lastly, reduction of risk. So if we bucket into those three, to understand in your specific problem or case where you want to apply AI, what will the ROI be and how quickly will I get it, will ultimately come down to these 1 to 2 things. One is, how complex is the problem that you are solving? And two, how critical is the outcome? So what I mean by that is, if my problem that I'm trying to solve is it takes a really long time to write all of these summaries for internal presentations around our science or clinical data, well, I can pipe in a rough draft into ChatGPT and it'll generate a summary, and I can copy it, I can edit it, modify it for an internal presentation. That is not a complex problem, but also ultimately in the grand scheme of things, the outcome of that is not critical. And what I mean by that is this internal presentation, it's very human reviewed, this is not touching the patient, right? So it's very, very low risk. On the flip side, when you're looking at, for example, evaluating or making decisions off of field medical or med info data, and you're evaluating things like sentiment or HCP's educational journey along a scientific narrative, more impact-based measures, you want to be making decisions based off of really accurate data. So that is a higher risk or more critical outcome, and also it's a much more complex problem space, right? And in those scenarios, the ROI is very high because it can really impact your medical strategy and outcomes in a positive way, and also the problem's immensely complex. And in these cases, likely what you're going to see is that the investment from your end will have to be much more, and it might take a little bit longer to actually see the ROI, because fundamentally for complex problems, you need to phase them out. The first thing you'll want to do is map out the problem, map out that solution, identify what are those key success criteria, and execute that over a short period of time to understand the value of given AI solution to solve your problem. And then you can leverage that to get buy-in from the rest of the team or from leadership to then continue and push that technology forward because you've now demonstrated that ROI. For the simpler cases that I talked about, like with the paragraph rephrasing, right, that investment's fairly low, the ROI is low, but you're going to see the results almost immediately, right, within a couple of days of usage. So the scale of how advanced the problem is and how critical or risky, if you will, the output is can determine how quickly you will see the ROI and what the ROI looks like.